beaming in from New Zealand, Cynthia. Kia ora.
Oh, have we?
Donna Wells.
Hi, Donna from New Zealand. That's terrific.
I'm guessing.
So hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Wellbeing Wednesday. So as those of you who have been here before, you would know that Louise and I started this at the beginning of the original lockdown 1.0 in March, because we just thought it would be great to provide a space for people to come together to talk about the really important topic of well-being. And we also thought that we'd use the opportunity to gather all the fantastic wisdom from women in rural, regional and remote Australia. And particularly, I'm in Benalla at the moment at my dad's place, isolating with him, but I do live in Melbourne and I think that the research has shown that, no surprise, a lot of people who live in rural, regional and remote Australia were coping a lot better with the global pandemic than many people in urban areas. And we just thought it would be a great way to bring people together to support each other and discuss well-being. So I am a leadership facilitator coach, really interested in how we get the best out of ourselves and our teams. So from that point of view, well-being's a crucial pillar of that. I'd like to introduce my co-host Louise. Louise, over to you.
Thanks, Cynthia. And like my pilot today, I'm the purser today in our flight. I work in the area of leadership development, so I spend quite a bit of time at the moment lifting people's resilience so that they can then lift the resilience of those around them. And will I continue, Cynthia, welcoming everyone?
Please.
And being the purser on our flight today, I would firstly like to welcome our frequent flyers, given we are at episode number 20. I'm sure you've checked in at your seat. You have the dashboard. Now, you might be on a phone or a tablet or a Mac or a computer. It's all different, but I'm sure you've navigated that in the last 20 weeks and are familiar with it. We always suggest that you play around with what screen you want to see. You will generally just see Cynthia, myself and Jill, our special guest today. And we love to see the chat room going off. So I'll keep an eye on that while Cynthia flies the plane today. And you might want to use the chat room for that, or you might want to use a Q&A button, which is great for landing a question that you want us to ask on your behalf and that we don't miss it, because it might get lost in the chat room, even though that's my role. Sometimes it will quickly go through. So I have already asked people to check in, like you do on a flight, on where you are travelling from and what's your wellbeing tip for us today. We will aim to get the wisdom out of Jill today, but we always know the answer is on the plane, and there are lots of people flying today, so you'll all have a bit of a tip for us. So enjoy reading those. We are recording. You're on mute, and back to you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Louise.
Hi,
so today we'll be going to quarter to 2 AEST, and after that we usually hang around for a bit. So just like at a real life workshop, which as facilitators the three of us are missing at the moment, we like to start 15 minutes early and then we hang around for a bit afterwards, just like at the workshop, where you can have a bit of a chat if you want to afterwards, a bit of a debrief, or if you need to go at 1:45, you're totally welcome to, that is fine. This is recorded. It will be put on my website. You will receive an email about that, and you'll also then be alerted to future speakers for Wellbeing Wednesday. So Jill, just to get started, welcome. So thrilled to have you with us today. And I'd just like to, for you to introduce yourself to the group.
Sure. So just sticking with the flight theme, I've just put my mobile phone to flight mode.
Good one.
So before I sort of go into who I am and what I do, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country that I stand on, And I'd like to acknowledge the Waveroo people, the custodians of this land. And I want to acknowledge the pain and disconnection that has happened during their lifetime and across generations. And I also want to acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders that are on today. I believe that the messages that I'm going to share today are culturally safe. So, but please, if we dabble into spaces and you're a TSI person or an Aboriginal person and you need to pull us up, then I'm very happy for you to pull me up and put it in the chat space. So Cynthia, you need to know a little bit about me.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I work in leadership and capacity building, and I work with people who sometimes know and sometimes don't know the space that they want to step into. And I believe the roles and the jobs that I do help people identify their leadership space or spaces. And the work that I do helps them, and the work that I've done with you helps them unearth their passions, understand better or develop their skills and their gifts, and also helps them see where there might be a communal or a wider need to do some action around leading the community to a new place. So that's primarily what I do. I do it all over Australia, and I do it across industries, with businesses, in work teams, with executive groups, whatever the space is, where people want to find how can I operate better under the umbrella of leadership. And my everyday work before COVID involved me spending probably 50% of my time out and about, away from my beautiful home here in northeast Victoria, in Norrong, and 50% back here in my home office called my lounge room couch, developing materials, researching concepts, following up and finishing off projects. So that's what I do. And I'm standing in my back office that actually is a trash heap, which is why I've got my virtual background on. And as I look past my laptop screen here, I can see my 3 fur babies hunkered down on their little sunny platform. And then beyond that, I can see a paddock that has been direct sown with a disc operation by my eldest son. And I know that this afternoon about 4 o'clock, I'll be taking the warm sunned fur babies for a walk out into that paddock for them to chase fox scent.
Beautiful. And so Jill, you also, so as well as having that business, you're on, as you've just said, you're on a property as well, and you've got your husband and your eldest son and your parents-in-law as well as part of that.
Absolutely.
That business. So tell us a bit more about that. You know, the complexities of intergenerational operations.
Yeah. So we're in a 3-generation business, as you said. Colin, my partner's parents, live just down the road from us, and until probably 4 or 5 years ago, Colin's dad was still very active. Ray was still very active in the business, and they've now transitioned into retirement. And so, so they do what they want at the moment. And then, probably about the same time that Ray moved away from hands-on day-to-day operational work in the business, our eldest son, Tom, came back into the business. And we learnt a lot about generational farming from Ray and Helen, and how to do it, and some of the pitfalls. And so when our boys were an age where it made sense for us to start talking about this land holding that we own in Waveroo country, we started talking to them about what does a business need rather than what does a lifestyle farm require. And so the boys were very well versed in that if they were to come back into the business, they needed to bring something back in. So James, the youngest, isn't a farmer, romantically loves the concept of farming, but actually isn't really interested in the nuts and bolts. And Tom is a passionate food grower, and he has brought new practices in. And Colin and I, during that process, had to work out, if we want a young person in this business, how do we make sure that we continue to hear his voices and give him space to do the leadership stuff in this business that will make it a viable business in generations to come? So, yeah.
Because that's a huge, like that whole issue of succession planning. I know I'm sort of going down a little rabbit hole, Jill, but that whole issue of succession planning, I mean, it's just so vexed for people, I mean, for anyone really in a family business, but particularly farmers. And I think the wisdom generally is it's not done very well. And that has such a huge impact on the well-being of everyone in that business when people are unable to have the conversations they need to have and hear, like you said, hear people's voices. So can you just, if you feel comfortable, what are some tips that you've got for people that might be grappling with that in their own lives?
So I suppose one of the portions of knowledge that Colin and I developed was understanding that generations have ways of behaving, and it's innate in how they work day to day. So we, for the first 10 or 15 years of us being together, it was us trying to change his parents and help them feel relaxed about, we weren't gold diggers. We loved this Waveroo country as much as they did. And we wanted to make a red hot go of it. And there was a sense of, we couldn't find common areas to talk really constructively about forward movement. And so that knowledge helped us understand, well, what has been our experience and what can we make sure that we do in a way that is respectful of the younger generation? Because if either or both of our boys want to come back into this partnership and they want to bring their partners into it, then how can we operate in a way that allows them to know that we will flex? So the concept of flexing, the concept of ownership, the concept of listening was really important. And it wasn't, I said to Colin that we can't offer Tom the opportunity until we've got, sorry everybody online, until we've got our shit together. So we have to get that together before we can say, come back in. And so there was an intense period of 2 or 3 years where we went round and round and round and round, getting rid of the stuff that we didn't need to worry about and building up a new way of being. Yeah. And consequently, Tom's got his own thing, and I'm sure he doesn't love it every day, but there's never been a sense that he's packing his bags and taking his toothbrush and getting the hell out.
And I think that it sounds like everyone knows where they stand. Like one of the things that, Jill, I admire so much about you in your communication is you're very clear. You're very clear, and direct, which like you don't fluff around. And I really appreciate that way of communicating. So I think that, has that made a difference to that direct sort of everything's out on the table and everyone knows where they stand?
And it's also me knowing my position as well. So I would love to facilitate them. And so at various points I've had to say, can I step in and help you with this? So that was really important, to work out what our roles were. And I think that's the same with wellbeing. What's my role in this? So I had to seek permission if I could see them moving into a space that was unproductive. I had to seek permission to get the butcher's paper out. But Cynthia and Louise, one of the primary things that we did right at the beginning was that I made Colin and Tom sit down and work out their values. And they like, what? But I said, look, I think this is really important. And I think also you need to put out on the table, what do you want this space to look like? What do you want this enterprise to be? And so they didn't get stuck in the operational about who's doing what and why is he doing that and he hasn't talked to me. they got that big framework around them that then allowed them to have some really open discussion about new practices, no-till farming, stuff that, you know, changing of lambing procedures that perhaps would have happened, but perhaps not as efficiently as it did when I put my facilitator hat on.
So Jill, you talk about values, and that's a big part of the work that you do with individuals and with groups and teams and businesses. So can you tell us what do you think the impact of doing that work on values is on your well-being? Why is it so important?
Yeah, okay. So this is going to be a little bit of a complex picture that I'm going to paint. So in my head, my well-being, so I'm going to talk from my perspective because I think it's not valuable to talk at a theoretical level. So for me, my well-being is fundamentally linked to my passion for what I'm doing, whether it's, at the moment, I'm passionate about knitting bloody blankets. And what my passion, my gifts and skills, and understanding that they don't exist in a vacuum, that they're linked to a need. So I think they are really important for me. I think they're important for everybody. And then around that swirls my values. So my values are linked to my passion. My values are linked to the things that I like doing and the skills that I'm good at showing. And they're really linked to me identifying needs in my community or in the country or in an industry. So I think values swirl around all of that stuff, and to think that they don't connect with those three areas is not really understanding how I work best. So values, I think, are incredibly important. And if my values are conflicted, then those three things, my passions, where I'm using my skills and the part of the community that I'm working in, don't work as well. And therefore my well-being isn't as robust as it can be, because things are clashing, and my subconscious mind is spending a lot of time trying and, you know, connect them or find out the disconnect. So my subconscious is being active in this space of, I'm not quite comfortable. And so that's where all of this energy is being used. And so therefore I can't be as well and as happy as I could be.
So when your well-being is going well, how does that play out in your life?
So when I'm well, I'm an extrovert, so I operate at a really, really high energy level.
Really?
Like you and Louise, like that's how I operate. So when my well-being is good, then I can feel my energy now. So I know that I'm in the right space. So I'm with two people I trust. I'm talking about something that I know about, and I believe that hopefully I'm meeting a few people's needs that have bothered to drop in at 1 o'clock. So I think I can tell my well-being from my energy. And I have to tell you, 2 weeks ago when I was really sick, my well-being was very, very low. And I kept thinking, how am I going to crawl out of this tunnel? Because I was physically unwell, which didn't help my mental well-being. And so I kept thinking, how I can see the light, but how am I going to get there? And so I think my energy, my internal energy that I can feel, has a huge impact. But I also know, Synth, that when I am not feeling well, then some of my behaviour is to pretend I'm okay. And then I feel that because I'm pretending, that's even using more energy, it's just perpetuating this sense of not so well. So then when I feel that I'm unwell, I have to be okay about being vulnerable and saying to trusted people when they say, how are you? To say, well, actually, I'm shit ass. And actually, I was in hospital for 3 days. And actually, they morphed me out because I was so sick. And actually, they OD'd me because I was so sick. And you go, and you don't always tell that whole story, but that sense of being able to say to somebody, actually, I'm not great, stops the chatter of pretending to be okay. Like that subconscious energy that you're using to pretend that you're okay. And I know that a couple of the people I work with are online listening, and they know. Like one of them the other day when we got on a meeting call, she said, oh, it's so good to hear the real Jill back. So they could sense it, but I was pretending that I was okay. That's not good. It's not good.
And Jill, when you, so you know, you're a hugely authentic person. So it's interesting that even sometimes you've got your armor up, as Brene Brown calls it, your armor. And so thank you for acknowledging that, you know, at times it is difficult for all of us to ask for help sometimes or acknowledge what's really going on. You do, and I'm just interested, you do a lot of work with young people and with people in different communities, particularly Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. What's your, I'm not really sure what my question is, but about sort of vulnerability, mental health, and the difference when someone like you talks about it. How does that help other people and the conversation?
Yeah. So for me, when I have to choose who I'm sharing my unwellness with. Yeah. So like whether it's a physical unwellness or just not being at the top of my game, mostly it's a physical unwellness that knocks me, and then I can feel my energy being zapped because I'm not doing what I love, and that's my energy giver. So when I'm not going to tell everybody. So all of you 31 people online, you're in on a secret now. No, not really. But it's that sense of I have to tell the trusted person or a few trusted people, because when I'm telling that to somebody, I don't want them to smother me and say, oh, you're okay. I want them to check in with me. And so when I was thinking about coming online today, I was thinking about, so what does the checking in give me? So if I say to my older sister, who is an amazing support for me, she'll say, how's Effectus going? Must be crap with COVID. And I'll go, yeah, it's pretty shit ass. My calendar was full and now it's empty again. And then it was full again and now it's empty again. She won't just leave it at that. The next day, she will ask again. And that gives me courage to really own it. Okay, I've put it out there. She's asked. Now she's asking again. So this is me. And I think that really helps. And when I think about other people and vulnerability and the willingness to share, what it does for me is that coming back at me helps me understand that people value me, and I love being loved. So that's part of my personality. And so that second, how are you really going, and how...
Sorry, keep going.
How that second, how are you really going, helps me understand that they value me and that they're not just that trusted, I'm telling you something. That first response wasn't just a flick off, you know, oh, this is the right thing to say. So that learning about the second ask, the second, are you okay? The second, what can I do? I think is the thing that helps people then go, oh, okay, so it was okay to share that vulnerability. It was okay to tell my story. And that person actually really is digging in and thinking about me during this time. And they mightn't remember tomorrow, but they remembered again today. And I think for all of us, that second dig, that second message, that second connection helps people, particularly in such shitty times as we're experiencing now. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jill, you're another one of your passions, as you said at the beginning, I think, is about leading through chaos when times are, turbulent. So, golly, isn't that right now? So I'm just wondering again what insights you have about chaos and perhaps it's linked to well-being and how we, from a personal leadership point of view, might manage ourselves more effectively through that.
So Heidi, if you're still online, you make sure you type away here because you're a bit of a guru in this space as well. But I think one of the things that Heidi really unearthed very well for Effectus this year was that concept of give yourself a break. Like, know that in these really, like, I thought I understood chaos and then COVID hit. Like, this is on a completely different scale. But that idea of giving yourself a break and going easy on yourself has to be important during chaotic times. That know that you've got a whole heap of extra brain bandwidth, as I call it, being used just to work out whether you can catch public transport home today or whether you can get across the Queensland-New South Wales border to see your aunt or whatever. So there's a whole heap of bandwidth that's been used in a way that most of us haven't ever had to think about before. So that's a new level of chaos for me. But the thing for me that I found interesting during the COVID wave 1.0, as you referred to it a moment ago, was people's responses to it and my anger, my not tiger anger, but confusion is probably a better word, about how people were responding. And I'm sure it's not so long ago that people don't remember toilet paper gate and people buying hundreds of rolls of toilet paper. And I can remember thinking, what is wrong with people? And then I went to the supermarket and I needed 1 can of tomatoes. I bought 4. And I thought, oh, Jill, you need to know this about yourself. So you're doing a little bit of lower level panic buying here. And so that was the first thing. Okay, so where is our trigger? What is the trigger for chaos and what is our behaviour when we're in that chaotic? And to know it. And to know that my response to chaos and this sense of no clear direction could be really different to yours and to everyone's online. It will be different. And so that first bit that I was saying about Heidi talking about giving yourself a break, well, actually, I think we need to give everybody a break. Yeah. And so when we see dear old ladies in the supermarket forgetting not to give their friend a hug after church, I want to go, you idiot! But actually, what I have to say is I have to give her a break. And I just have to do what I need to do, which is wheel my trolley out of that line until they've stopped sharing their germs and go into it at another time. So there's that sense of what is it about me? And then it's how am I responding?
See you, Darren.
Oh, Dazza, see ya.
Yeah, so really, I love Louise's written there, chaos triggers. So that self-awareness, Jill, to not be on autopilot, but to check yourself and know what your signs are, and in the moment make a different decision. Yeah, and what else about for now, like particularly, I mean, I know we've got people from all over, but in Victoria, we are obsessed with COVID right now. Like it really is it's all a lot of us think about. And much to my surprise, I was chatting to someone in Queensland the other day and they were just like, life's normal. And it was just like, oh my God, what? What do you mean? Someone didn't even really know that the numbers yesterday were 427. And I was like, how could you not know that? But they're up in Queensland. So we've sort of got a society at different levels. Are you seeing that play out at all in the people you're talking to? And
yeah, definitely.
How do we help each other? Because you're having conversations with people in industries all over the...
Yeah. So I think probably my what I'm hearing is that even though Victoria is a cot case and everybody hates us at the moment, that actually for the rest of the country, it's just there under the surface. So even though we're living the anxiety that everywhere else, like if you think about what happened in Tassie yesterday, they were going to be opening up I think tomorrow or the day after, and they've shut their borders again. So I think that sense of it's just there for everybody else can be equally as discombobulating for people. Like we are living it, obsessing about it, to the point where I'm not turning on the telly anymore because I can't bear hearing it. I just check in at certain times. So I'm moderating the information that's going into my head. And I think everybody in Australia, probably everybody in the world, most people in the world will be feeling that level of how do I hear the information that I want to hear so I don't go down. So in chaos, there's a first dip of how do I move? Denial. I don't want to know about it. How do I moderate the information that comes into my brain so I don't get stuck down in denial and become somebody who isn't very helpful in my community and in Australia? I don't know whether that answers your question, but I'm hearing people saying, oh, you think it's okay over here? Well, we can't move product. And so we're probably going to have to close down our factory. Yeah, you think you're in pain because you got all the cases, but there is also pain in the rest of the country because business is still suffering and communities are still on high alert. Yeah.
And Jill, for you, just coming back to that well-being focus, has there been a time, like, did you sort of in your life maybe not pay a lot of attention to your well-being and then something happened and you went, shit, I need to work on this? Or has it just sort of been a gradual thing? Or what's sort of part of your well-being story?
So we talked about, the barrier, I call it bulletproof vest, that I used to wear. So there was a period of, so I have I'm chronically ill, have a, chronic health issue that most people don't know about. And I'm not going to bother sharing all the gory details today, but it came to a head probably 16 years ago. So I've been living with it for probably 30 years. 10 of those were like, it didn't really affect me. And then suddenly I got quite sick. And it came to a head when I was out working and I was sick and I needed to share with the people in the room that I was sick and that I would probably not be able to stay in the room consistently for the rest of the day, that my co-facilitator was probably going to have to run the day, and that I would pop in whenever I could, but actually I was going up to my room and I was going to go to bed because I was so sick. And that was a huge awakening for me. I wasn't at home, so I wasn't surrounded by the person I trust the most, my husband. And so that was really confronting to know that I was so sick and the person who would have just said, what can I do for you, wasn't there. And then the second part was, who do I reach out to here because I'm so unwell? But when I got home, there was that sense of, oh, this illness is at a new level now. And so I have to think about, do I want to keep doing what I love? Which is part of why I'm well, because I'm doing what I love. Or do I stop doing what I love? And what impact, is that going to make any difference to my chronic ill health? So that was a real changing point for me. And the process was to step into it and say, okay, so now what I need to do is I need to share this with the people who are co-facilitating with me, who are part of my business, my funders who might wonder why, the person they're paying wasn't in the room for 12 hours when we thought she was going to be, and somebody who she subcontracted was in there doing the job. So there was that process of how do I help me stay as well as I can be by talking and sharing this. And that was really hard because my chronic health issue is not a pleasant topic. Like, it's not pleasant to share with people my illness. And so you have to work out how to have those stories. And there are lots of illnesses that are really, really difficult to talk about. Mental illnesses as well as physical illnesses.
And Jill, you're such a, can-do, capable, like you said, the bulletproof, so I can imagine that would have been really, it would have been so confronting to sort of go, I'm actually not a superhuman, as I, everyone thinks I am, because I'm Jill Briggs. But I'm actually I've got some, I'm vulnerable. And I'm really interested that I bet none of those funders said, well, you're never working for us again.
No. But it was a real sense of, how do I tell my story that doesn't repulse people? So that sense of, how do you tell your weakness in a way that doesn't make people step away from you, helps them to stay with you? And then how can you create a story that allows people then to say, well, we don't want you to be any less, but how can we help you be who you are? And so that conversation of how do we keep working together in a way that allows me to still love what I'm doing, but they can help me. And then the conversation becomes, well, how can we help each other? Like that sharing it, well, then other stuff comes up. Oh, well, I've got 2 kids at home and I can't actually do some of this work during the school holidays. So it raises those opportunities for us to see the space differently.
Yeah, terrific. So I'm just conscious, gosh, we've brought it back to 45 minutes because we had some feedback that an hour, maybe it would be a bit, better, just a little shorter, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We've barely scratched the surface. I just want to finish off just for you to summarize your 3 tips, because we ask each guest 3 tips. And then I've got a question from Sally, and then any other, if we've got time for any other questions. So your 3 top tips for wellbeing for people, Jill.
So I wrote these down. So my first is think about the leadership space that you want to be in. Now, leadership space might sound like chair of something, but actually it's not. Where do you want to change the world? Small, large, whatever. Think about that and think about connecting to your values, your passions, your gifts, and a need. So for me, well-being is about feeling like I'm doing something that's great. And so if I can identify the leadership space that I want to work in that covers off on my values, my passions, my gifts and the need, then that will help me feel better each day when I wake up. So that's my first tip. Think about the leadership space or the place that you want to change the world. Second one is when push comes to shove, think about your circle of control. So what can I control to help me be as well as I can be? And in my case, how can I control things so I can be present, attentive, value adding, assisting, uplifting in my role? So what is my circle of concern? And when I've got that right about me and my wellness, then I can move into my circle of influence in helping other people. And the third one is to carve out chill time. So one of the things I know that I need to do is I need to clear calendars when I've got a big week or 2 weeks of stuff happening so that I can go and watch Bridget Jones' Diary for a 57th time, because I have to find a chill time. And some of you are mothers and some of you are fathers and some of you have got really busy lives, but sometimes it's repackaging what you're doing in, this is my chill time. This walk along the beach is my chill time. It's not exercise time.
Yeah.
It's a chill time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're my three.
Chill times just has such a more self-loving vibe to it than, yes, I must go out and do my exercise.
Yeah.
I love it, Jill. Thank you. Now, I don't know, Louise seems to have just disappeared for the moment. Maybe she's come in again as a participant and I have to, no, she's gone. Something must have happened there. So I'll just go quickly to a question from Sally Murfitt from Tassie. Hi, Sally, a previous.
Hi, Sal.
What are your go-tos when you feel yourself feeling overwhelmed, Jill?
My go-tos are, so my go-to is, where is my energy? So what is my energy level about this? And if it's low, then think about, what am I doing here if my energy is low? So that's my first go-to. How's my personal energy level feeling? And then my second go-to is, if I'm really feeling overwhelmed, take time out. So definitely shut the screen, put the pencil down, whatever it is, as soon as I can. So perhaps it can't happen with, in 48 hours or 72 hours, but when I can feel that I'm feeling overwhelmed, then shut it down as soon as I can and do some chill time. And then before I open it up, think about, so what are the things that have to be done and the things that I want done?
Yeah.
And just think about it, because sometimes the have to's don't have to be, and sometimes the want to's get in the way of getting on with productive stuff. So they're two tips.
Yeah. Thanks, Jill. And then there's one from Belinda Griffiths. Hello, lovely Belinda. Chaos, whether it's COVID or our own personal challenges, offer the opportunity for new ways of seeing, ways of being, and new ways of leading. What is your hope for future leadership, Jill?
So, Belinda, you're talking my talk. I always think chaos is completely full of opportunities. And if you think about this current chaos, look at all those businesses that started manufacturing hand sanitizer within three minutes of it hitting the airwaves, and people making. So I think chaos, we often think chaos is leading to disaster, but actually I think chaos always leads us to new opportunities. So you're seeing from the same hymn sheet as me there, Belinda. But what are my hints about leadership and chaos? Was that the question?
And the future. What's your hope for future leadership?
So here's my hope, that that we actually, as a globe, make a decision that hero leadership has never, ever, ever worked, and that the language that certain parts of the globe use around leadership is so yesterday. Like, it's definitely last century, and it's probably mid last century that hero worship emerged, and it was probably around stuff like world wars and men being killed and things like that. I think that's really yesterday. And if I could say to leaders wherever they are, in whatever position they choose to lead, me in a bus stop meeting, you running your business, leadership is always about us, never me. And so if you can't hear the us, then you're not leading. You're just standing on a soapbox and having a yell. And so to remove completely from our language and our thinking that leadership is about heroes would be incredibly useful for the world. Really, really useful for the world.
And so Belinda says, love it. Thank you, Jill. So simple, really, when it comes down to it. And Susan said, shouldn't leadership be about empowering others before anything else? What do you think, Jill?
So if some of my graduates wanted to put some thoughts into the chat area now, I think that leadership is about everybody knowing that this is where the world needs to be. So I think that's the first step, is that consciousness raising of we need to move to another place. As a group, we need to move from here to here. And then it's about how do we get everybody moving in a way that won't be coherent, won't be smooth, won't be simple, but get them to understand this is where we're going and this is how we're going to get there, and to just let them have a go. Like, one of the experiences that Cynthia and I have had over the years is that if you just say to people, have a go, then it's amazing what happens. Like, people just like, oh, so I could have a go, see what happens.
Yep. And just one other thing, Jill, who do you think's doing leadership really well at the moment from a global perspective? Who are your
Well, at the risk of offending everybody in Australia on the chat group except for Donna Wells, I think Jacinta Ardern is an amazing example of how you do it differently. Now, I wonder whether that's because she's a female. Yes, no, maybe. It might be for a whole heap of reasons. And what I always have to remember is that I'm not a New Zealander. Just like I love the way Barack Obama was a, diplomatic world leader, I didn't live in America. So the image we were getting was brushed for us. But I think Ardern's way of communicating, of being real, of being the whole person rather than pretense, is refreshing. And I think there are some people locally that I see that are doing things really well in the generous nature and the open way that they are working with people. That, like my current local member, Helen Haynes, has just got this warmth and wisdom and love for people that is, you would want to get a blood transfusion if you could, because she knows how to do this stuff as well. And it's interesting that she's another female.
Yep, terrific. So, Jill, we're going to just hang around for a little bit. So we'll stop official proceedings here and just say a huge thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to all our participants from all over the place. It's just been such a pleasure to interview you, and there's just we only, as with all our guests, we only scratched the surface today. So yeah, thank you again so much, Jill.
Thanks,
Jill.
Thanks so much for having me.
It is a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
And it sounds like we'll also get Heidi on a bit later as well.
Absolutely.
Heidi, that would be really terrific. So people are saying thanks for an uplifting session. Thanks, we love you, Jill, all of that stuff. Now, Louise, you disappeared for a bit and you're back.
Yeah, internet went in the house. So took, I don't know how long I was away, but I was able to hotspot from my phone.
Oh, terrific.
Did you see Arthur's question there about expanding on the point that you shared about worries and failures with others?
No, would you just like to, just share that one? Hi, Arthur.
Get Arthur to ask, or will I?
So it was about the sense of opening up and sharing with people.
Arthur's asked, could you expand a little bit more on your point about sharing your worries and failures with others? Do you think how much needs to be shared as a colleague and in a leadership role?
Good question, Arthur. So again, I'm just going to go to me. I'm not going to give you any theoretical background here. But actually for me, it's the lead up to the share that is the hardest bit. So I call them my generation of voices that sit on my shoulder, and they're my father, my paternal grandmother. So there's a few people whose voices I hear very strongly when I'm about to reveal stuff. And having done a bit of work on this around conflict management, I know how to shush them, but it's amazing how loudly they yell about, don't tell people that. They're going to think you're a dickhead. So for me, the lead up to the sharing is always the most exhausting part for my brain and my well-being, because I'm running around in circles trying to work out how I can please my father and my grandmother by not looking like I'm weak or vulnerable or stupid. And they're the words that these voices say to me. So Arthur, my sense is that when I get through that, I can articulate things very carefully and very clearly, but it can take me months.
That's really good to know.
Months.
Really good to know, Jill. And that's from someone who is, I think, is good at, as I said before, you're clear, you're articulate, and you've got a really deep knowledge of this stuff. And, you know, I just think no matter how experienced we are, it's just, you know, we just have to keep practicing, don't we? And keep flexing that muscle and hoping it grows a bit to make the next time a bit easier. So that's, Jo, thanks for that. You've said it, I've found when I've recently shared unwell-being, I felt like I've been able to drop a huge load I didn't need to carry, and it has allowed support in.
Totally, Jo.
Yeah, I think that we can often, the biggest gift that we can give others is actually asking for help and enabling them to help us. So I'm just going to end official proceedings there, and then we'll just hang around for a bit. So if you need to go, no problems, but if you want to hang around a bit, ask a question, dig a bit deeper into some of Jill's knowledge, feel free. So next week we have Louise.
We have Raylene Hall, and I think she's 1,000 k's north somewhere. Is it WA?
Yep.
Yep.
From Perth, yeah, north of
yeah.
Perth. She's 1,000 k's north of Perth, and like Tiani last week, she's also involved in that remote parents education group. And where I asked for a volunteer on Twitter of, did anyone know anyone who could speak to us about body image? That was one of the things that people requested, and Raylene contacted me and said, I'd love to speak about it. The other thing that we wanted to ask you as well is just if you can email us with anyone that you think would be a great speaker, a topic. I would really like to talk about sex, actually. Being a woman with a cat going through menopause who's been single for many, many years, it would be quite interesting to talk about this topic that I know little about at this stage. But I reckon it's really important to our well-being. Sex, if anyone knows of a woman living in rural, regional, remote Australia who would have something really great to offer, who might work, I don't know, medical or psychological, whatever, I think that'd be great. And we've also been talking about maybe someone who does wealth as well, something around, because money is hugely important to our well-being. So again, if there are other topics, then Emma's dying with, I tell too much. I say too much.
No, you don't.
Anywho.
So we need a photo.
Yeah, it's a photo. So I'll just go into gallery view. If you can smile, please, Jill and Louise. Just close that. Close that. Close. Okay, we'll just take a little photo. Function. Is it function? I think, oh no, alt. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Oh.
We've got a few suggestions coming through. Helen Haynes, Matthew McGowan from
Yep. Thanks, Em.
I'm not sure. Are they the ones to help with sex? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know. We could ask. Helen's a health educator, isn't she? From nursing, whatever.
We have a panel on that. I'd say a few people would want to be on that. Maybe.
Okay, I shall pause recording. So thanks, everyone. I should have paused recording before I talked about my cat.
And sex.